Welcome to Resilience and Resolve with Lance Drury.
Welcome back to Resilience and Resolve with Lance Drury, the show that helps individuals and small business owners fight back when the IRS comes calling. Now, Lance Drury is a seasoned tax attorney who has been defending clients for over 20 years with one goal in mind: protecting what matters most. I'm your host, Evan Mack, and today we're answering a question that a lot of people silently wrestle with, and this is: what happens if you ignore the IRS? Lance Drury, kind sir, welcome back.
Good to see you again, Evan.
Good to see you too. Listen, what's the weather like where you at right now? You said it's a nice balmy 80 degrees.
It's beautiful out there. It's going to be 80 degrees for a high today. I walked out a little while ago to the front of my building. It's almost cool out there.
Almost cool. So a lot of questions about the IRS and the misconceptions about IRS, but let's start with the common behavior. Why do so many people tend to ignore the IRS, even though we all know that we owe? Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's a couple things. A lot of people think it's just going to go away if they ignore it. And the other thing is my clients are procrastinators. That's what got them into this problem to begin with is, they didn't file their tax returns or they didn't pay their liability because they wanted to keep the business going. So they paid their employees, their suppliers, didn't have the money left over to pay the IRS. And then it kind of snowballs. And so that's the reason why I think people ignore the IRS is they think it's going to go away and they procrastinate.
So what's the first thing the IRS typically does when someone doesn't respond to a notice or file on the return?
Well, I don't know if there's any one thing. You've got to remember that they're a bureaucracy. There's 26 million delinquent taxpayers. There's not enough people in the IRS system to keep up. I've never seen them as bad as they are now. Things are taking a lot longer. They're making a lot more mistakes. These notices, you may get a notice and then the next one may come a month after, or it might come 6 months after or a year after. So, like I said, they're a bureaucracy. Things fall through the cracks. So you never know what the IRS is going to do.
So at what point does ignoring the IRS turn into a bigger problem? Liens, levies, or maybe even criminal charges? At what point does that happen?
Well, the biggest problem is when you ignore all those letters that say notice of intent to levy. Yeah. And finally, you're going to get one that says final notice of intent to levy. And if you ignore that one, after 30 days, they can wipe out your bank account, take 90% of your take-home pay, take 100% of your 1099, and garnish 15% of your Social Security. But if most of those Social Security checks are direct debits, once it hits that account, they can wipe it completely out. So, that's the problem with ignoring the IRS, and it's particularly a problem when you get those final notices of intent to levy. And by the way, Evan, normally people think the IRS is going to come after them more during tax season. So normally our big months are January through May, but July was a record revenue month for the firm because the IRS was sending out those levy notices. They were either threatening people with levies or they were actually levying them. And that's when people pick up the phone and call when they get those nasty grams from the IRS.
So is it true the IRS can file a return for you if you don't file one? If that's the case, what does that look like?
Yeah, they absolutely. Now, they don't always do it, but you are required to file the last 6 years' tax returns. If you don't file, the IRS may file for you. Their numbers are bogus because they don't give you all the credits and deductions you're entitled to. Yeah. And if you're self-employed, they don't keep track of your business expenses.
Wow.
So if you're self-employed, they could file a return showing that you owe them 6 figures. Then people hire us. We get it down below $10,000 in liability. But those numbers are gospel until the taxpayer files. Now, the IRS requires you to file the last 6 years, which is 2019 through 2024. And this is why I tell people not to hire an accountant to deal with IRS issues, because one of the biggest mistakes and one of the worst pieces of advice that I've seen accountants give people is you got to file all your returns. So let's say you haven't filed since 2014. They file 15, 16, 17, and 18. The IRS only requires that you file the last 6 years, which would be 2019 through 24. If 15 through 18, the IRS did not file for you and you don't file, your liability is zero. And at this late date, the IRS does not have the manpower, the resources to go back and to prepare a substitute return for you prior to 2019. So they require them to file them all, and they're putting tens of thousands of liability on the books for the taxpayer that don't need to be there.
So what about your credit score? Can ignoring the IRS impact that, your bank accounts, or can they get to your passport?
Yes, they can absolutely get to your passport if you
They get to my passport, Lance Drury?
Yes, they can, Evan, if you owe enough money. It started out at 51,000 or above. Now I think that figures somewhere between 55 and 60. But if you owe that much liability to the IRS, you had better call them up and set some type of payment plan, because if you don't, they can refer your case to the State Department, and then the State Department's either not going to renew your passport or revoke your passport. So, those go out periodically. A lot of times they don't go out because, like I said, they're a bureaucracy. They don't have enough resources. But if they take the step of notifying the State Department of your delinquency with the IRS, then absolutely they can take your passport away from you.
It's incredible stuff. How does interest and penalty stacking make the debt worse, even maybe the longer you wait?
After 7 3/4 years, the liability doubles just because of the penalties and interest. I think I've told you this before, Evan, but if you and I charge what they charge for penalties and interest, we'd be in the penitentiary. But they get to do it. And here's the other thing I'm going to tell you about this. Here's another mistake. I just had this happen again the other day. Guy prepares his return. He doesn't file it because he's going to owe, and he doesn't have the money to pay it. Big mistake, because there's a failure to file penalty, which is 5% per month for the first 5 months after your tax return was due to be filed. It maxes out at 25%. So if you have a $10,000 raw tax liability, you've now made it $12,500, and that's before the penalty for failure to pay and the interest. So you've just created huge problems. So if you got $50,000 liability, well, guess what? You can add on another $12,500 to that. So the $50,000's now $62,500 before the failure to file penalty and the interest are even added.
Wow. So what happens if someone disappears from the IRS radar, maybe for a few years? Can they can it come forward and fix it later? It's like, you know what I mean? Let's say they just 6 years, 7 years, 8 years. Can they come back and fix things?
Of course, but with the closer you get to that 10-year period, the IRS only has 10 years to come after you for collection purposes after the tax is assessed. So that means either the IRS has to file for it or you file. But if you get close to, within the last 2 years of the collection statute, and you have all this liability, you probably just want to let sleeping dogs lie and run out the clock. I mean, I've got a guy now next month, $90,000 in tax liability. It's all going to go away in September. I've got a guy in Tennessee, he owed $500,000, well over 100,000 fell off in September of last year, and the rest of it's going to fall off in a year and a half. So even if they tried to come after him now, there's probably not a whole lot that they can do to collect in a year and a half. They can certainly get 100,000 maybe, but still the vast bulk of that he's never going to have to pay.
So what's your advice to someone who's embarrassed, maybe overwhelmed and afraid to open that next IRS letter because they know it might be some bad news?
Well, you've got to open the letters, and you need professional help. You know, most tax attorneys talk numbers. I talk about freedom, freedom from the clutches of the IRS. I'm the liberation architect, Evan. I'm the guy who's going to give you your freedom back, your peace of mind. As I've said before, I'm saving Fay Ray from the clutches of King Kong. That's what my firm does. That's what we do every single day. And that's what we're going to continue to do for people and businesses who have tax problems with the Internal Revenue Service.
Absolutely. So, Lance, if someone's been avoiding the IRS for a long time, what's the first step back towards a resolution?
They need to call me, and we'll look into your situation. We'll send you financial statements. We'll look at your ability to pay. And then after we see what's going on in the IRS systems and we analyze the whole chronology of your case with the IRS and we go through the financials, then we're going to formulate a strategy to figure out the best way to solve your problem. 85 to 90% of my clients never pay back the full amount. 10 to 15% never pay a dime, but it's all based on your ability to pay it back. So it's a lot of work for the taxpayer. It's a lot of work for us. But if you want to settle for less than the full amount, that's what you have to do. You have to prove to Uncle Sam with documentation that you don't have the ability to pay the whole tax debt back.
Lance Drury, my man, appreciate your time as always. Go out there and enjoy that nice weather.
I'm going to, Evan. I'm taking off a little early this afternoon so I can enjoy the weather. I've had a long week. I've been to my San Antonio office this week.
So you're in San Antonio right now?
No, I got back Wednesday. It's Friday now, but I left Sunday morning from the airport in St. Louis, went down there, met my two lawyers from Los Angeles who are going to run that office. I think we talked about this.
Yep.
And I think the next step will be we're going to open a satellite office down there in Houston, Texas.
Loving it. Lance, I appreciate you, sir.
Thank you, Evan. It's always a pleasure. You have a great weekend.
You too. And guys, thank you for tuning in to Resilience and Resolve. If you've been dodging the IRS out of fear or stress, visit lancedrurylaw.com. Now, Lance will help you face it head on and get your life back on track. And if you found today's episode helpful, be sure to like, subscribe, leave a review, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.